Please forget the name, the Forever Man. Growing up, the friends I always ended up gravitating towards were dirty kids. The kind of kids that carried pocket knives everywhere and probably went to class maybe a quarter of the time. Pretty much the kids' parents hated, but I loved. I had this routine of hanging out by the quarry in our town. This routine involved starting a fire from pallets we found from the shut-down agate business, drinking beers. Cody had snuck from his dad's fridge while he passed out drunk, smoking whatever we could, passing around old faded hustlers and trying to scare each other with stories. One of these times in particular, I'm going to pause the story here for a minute. Let's change the background. That's better. One of these times in particular, the usually more verbose and group braggart David was oddly quiet and standoffish that night. I had actually scored some pristine sticky buds for us that night, so we were particularly stoned out there. I had figured it was just the weed making him paranoid. We were going around the fire with the usual lame attempts to get a reaction out of someone. Daz was just finishing with the little, and it might be out there right now watching us. We all groaned and turned to David, who hadn't made a peep the entire time, just whipping his head over his shoulders from time to time when he heard a rustle from a bird or some other nocturnal animal. Come on, man, tell us a story or something. Pull your weight around here, we razzed him. He looked at me directly in the eyes and said, I can't forget the Forever Man. The impact of his statement was only shared by myself because mid-sentence David was drowned out by a loud fart followed up by Daz exclaiming, I heard it. It is watching us. Followed up by the group erupting in laughter. I had heard what David had said, and the way he said it though. I saw the pained and frightened expression he had, like a small prey animal cornered by a much larger predator. Visions of silhouetted, tall figures towering over thousands of tiny ants with expressions that matched David's filled my dreams after we had gone home, and I was safe in my bed. I woke up to my mattress and sheets soaked from that night's sweats. The following Monday, David did not show up to class, nor the next day, nor Monday after that. We had asked the school what happened to David, but they just told us that the family decided to move suddenly, and that they didn't have any more information past that. I still talk to some of the old friends, and we still have no clue what happened to David. Fast forward to my current day, and I'm drinking coffee at my favorite local coffee shop, and just people watching since I have the morning off. I overhear someone mention a band they liked called the Forever Men. And like a hard slap in the face, the memory of that night came rushing into my forethoughts, and the name almost more clear than ever, the Forever Man. My coffee mug made a sharp crack, followed by a splash as I dropped it on the floor without realizing it. Hot coffee spilled all over my shoes and ankles, which snapped me out of the memory quickly. A barista kindly came over with a towel and broom to ask if I was okay. I cleaned myself off while she swept up the mess I had just created and assured her that I was okay. It just slipped. The following week, I started to notice less and less wildlife near my house. The normal array of birds and occasional deer were dwindling nightly. 5 nights after the coffee shop incident, I accidentally left a bag of trash outside without putting it in the bin first. The next morning, where there normally would have been trash strewn about the yard by possums or raccoons, there was my bag of trash, untouched. The next night is when it all came to a head. I woke up to a particularly windy autumn morning and groggily tired down the tarps covering the wood for my fireplace. It was then I noticed a black tower in the distance that I haven't noticed before. It was completely still, even with the trees and limbs whipping about from the wind. Must be a new cell phone tower they put up last night. I didn't know they could put those up that fast, I thought to myself. Grumbling to myself, I walked inside thinking, of course we get a new cell phone tower, but no, they don't fix the actual service when I still have only one bar. Once inside, I make my usual egg and toast with a cup of coffee and head to work. On my way out of my property, I noticed that the tower almost seemed to be closer than it did before. Yeah, let's get you another cup of coffee, I say to myself as I shake off the observation as just being still a little groggy from earlier. It's a particularly slow day at work since the wind never died down and nobody wants to take out their bicycles in to be repaired. I close the shop early and head home after picking up a pizza from the local pizzeria, plus beers and smokes at the convenience store by my house. On the way home, I noticed that the black tower is significantly closer this time. After eating, I decided to check into what was going on and if they had a cell phone company that could just move a tower like that in the afternoon. After about an hour of absolutely no leads, I frustratedly gave up on the search and went outside to smoke a cigarette. 2 puffs into my cigarette, and I look at the edge of my property to make a lead weight in my stomach appear. At the fence that sections off where my property ends looms the black tower. However, I am now able to make out a vaguely humanoid shape to the tower. I feel like I can't breathe. What appears to be its head moves itself to face me. Before I realized what I was doing, I dropped my cigarette and hurled myself inside sliding glass door. I feel the ground tremble and the house shudder, as what I gather were its feet leave large indents in the dry soil. I see the presence of a gigantic foot and ankle at the glass door when everything stops. I look around for a second to look back at a tall but human-sized black silhouette facing me and knocking on the glass door. "I know you remember me," it says in a raspy, strained voice, like its lips had been pulled back and it had dried out from the sun. "I know you remember my name. I know your name. I remember that boy's name from so long ago, David. I never forget a name, and you'll never forget mine." I was paralyzed in fear. He knew my name and somehow my childhood friend's name too. And worst of all, I did remember his name. The Forever Man. The Forever Man. The Forever Man. The name keeps beating into my head repeatedly like a drum, almost like as if it were answering my thoughts. He had walked inside my house, started carefully inspecting my belongings, and spoke again. "You must be wondering how I got my name. I was not born into this world, at least not in any way you could comprehend. I saw the beginning. I am seeing the dawn, and I will see the destruction of mankind. I am not a god. I am just forever. he said as he began to stare up into nothingness. He stopped pacing and put his absence of a face and hands on the glass. I hate that I have to be stuck here with your kind. I hate that I have to be drowned in your stink. I hate that I have to watch day after day as you tear each other apart, and act as if it's all a godsend to this planet. Most of all, I hate what you have done to my home. I was here before you. He bellowed while pounding on the glass with his fists until I thought it was going to shatter. I was still paralyzed, but now I felt like I was being held down by an immense weight. He then stood up straight and cracked his neck and collected himself. After a moment, he spoke one last time in a much more calm and calculated tone. So, that's what leads us to here. And now, once you have learned my name, I will never let you forget. I will slowly haunt and torture humanity as people learn of my name. If you can spread my name to as many of your kind as possible, I might not make your particular corner of hell as bad as the rest. Which is why I'm posting this. To the listener, I beg forgiveness for what I have done. For as I asked you to forget the name, the Forever Man, I know you won't be able to. He won't let you. The end. What do you think? Yeah, I like that one too. It was interesting. Actually, there is one more. Let me find it here. I know it's right here somewhere. You're scared now because of that story? That was a pretty good one. It was nice and short. Thank you, Annabelle. Yeah, I think it works too. Oh, come on, it's right here somewhere. There it is. Okay, we're gonna do one more because this one is very short and I really like it. It really made me think the first time I heard it. Like, I thought about this story all day after I read it the first time. It's by user Blue Tidal, Tidal. It's called The Smiling Man. I love this story. The Smiling Man. I'm just gonna read this one. I'm gonna do it anyway. About 5 years ago, I lived downtown in a major city in the US. I've always been a night person, so I would often find myself bored after my roommate, who was decidedly not a night person, went to sleep. To pass the time, I used to go for long walks and spend time thinking. I spent 4 years like that, walking alone at night, and I never once had a reason to feel afraid. I always used to joke with my roommate. that even the drug dealers in this city were polite. But all of that changed in just a few minutes one evening. It was a Wednesday, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I was walking near a police-patrolled park, quite a ways from my apartment. It was a quiet night, even for a weeknight, with very little traffic and almost no one on foot. The park, as it was most nights, was completely empty. I turned down a short side street in order to loop back to my apartment when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street, on my side, was the silhouette of a man dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but he finished each box with an odd forward stride. I guess you could say he was dance walking, headed straight for me. Deciding he was probably just drunk, I stepped as close as I could to the road to give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass me by. The closer he got, the more I realized how gracefully he was moving. He was very tall and lengthy, and wearing an old suit. He danced closer still, until I could make out his face. His eyes were open and wide and wild, his head tilted back slightly, looking off into the sky, and his mouth formed a painfully wide cartoon of a smile. Between the eyes and the smile, I decided to cross the street before he danced any closer. I took my eyes off him to cross the empty street. As I reached the other side, I glanced back, and then stopped dead in my tracks. He had stopped dancing. He was standing with one foot in the street, perfectly parallel to me. He was facing me, but still looking skyward, smile on his wide lips. I was completely and utterly unnerved by this. I started walking again, but I kept my eyes on the man. He didn't move. Once I had put about a half a block between us, I turned away from him for a moment to watch the sidewalk in front of me. The street and sidewalk ahead of me were completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back to where he had been standing to find him gone. For the briefest of moments, I felt relieved until I noticed him. He had crossed the street and was now slightly crouched down. I couldn't tell for sure due to the distance and the shadows, but I was certain he was facing me. I had looked away from him for no more than 10 seconds, so it was clear that he had moved fast. I was so shocked that I stood there for some time staring at him, and then he started to move towards me again. He took giant, exaggerated, tiptoed steps as if he were a cartoon character sneaking up on someone. Except he was moving very, very quickly. I'd like to say, at this point, I ran away and pulled out my pepper spray or cell phone or anything, but I didn't. I just stood there, completely frozen and smiling. The man crept toward me. And then he just stopped again, about a car length away from me, still smiling his smile, still looking at the sky. When I finally found my voice, I blurted out the first thing that came to my mind. What I meant to ask was, "What the hell do you want?" in an angry, commanding tone. What came out was a whimper. What the hell? Regardless of whether or not humans can smell fear, they can certainly hear it. I heard it in my own voice, and they only made me more afraid. But he didn't react to it at all. He just stood there, smiling. And then, after what felt like forever, he turned around and very slowly, he started to dance, walking away. Just like that. No wanting to turn my back to him again, I just watched him go until he was far enough away to be almost out of sight. And then I realized something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor was he dancing. I watched in horror as the distant shape of him grew larger and larger. He was coming back my way, and he was running. I ran too. I ran until I was off the side road and back into the better lit road and sparse traffic. Looking behind me then, he was nowhere to be found. The rest of the way home, I kept glancing over my shoulder, always expecting to see that stupid smile, but he was never there. I lived in the city for 6 months after that night and never went out for another walk. There was something about his face that always has haunted me. He didn't look drunk. He didn't look high. He looked completely and utterly insane. And that's a very, very scary thing to see.